Hey guys, and welcome to Gwent, the Witcher card game. My name is Jaggerus, and this weekend was the Team Leviathan Gaming Invitational, a massive Gwent esports tournament with a $1,000 prize pool. The tournament played across 2 days. We went from 80 odd participants down to 16 on day one using Swiss format. Then we had a double elimination bracket that took 16 hours to complete, ending in a grand final winner who took home $600. During the weekend, I was commentating with Spiro, who is another Gwent commentator, and I did record a bunch of our games. So over the next couple of days for you, I will have some commentary videos showcasing some of the highest level of Gwent gameplay and seeing what the current meta looks like in terms of the tournament scene. In terms of factions, you will notice that there's no Skellige. Why is there no Skellige? Because Skellige was universally banned. People kept banning Skellige because it is such a powerful list. But as a result of that, you should be able to see lots of spicy Northern Realms and Nilfgaard gameplay, along with some monsters and some Syndicate. So stay tuned and I'll get those games up and running. One thing just to be of note is that there was occasionally issues where Spiro would see what happened before I did, just because of how the spectator client works. So sometimes he does react to things right before they happen. Other than that, enjoy, and if you enjoy the videos, maybe leave a like.
All right, game number one. It is going to be Gravesh versus Kams TLG deathmatch. I almost took F5 there. Whoops.
Oh, see, that's why you remove your F5 key, then you wouldn't accidentally do that.
So, looks like Gravesh versus Kams, game number one. Kams will be queuing in with monsters. Gravesh will be queuing in with Northern Realms. We've seen this matchup unfold many times in day one. It definitely ended up being quite a one-sided matchup most times. However, previously we did see Fireball versus Cybers, and Fireball Cybers actually managed to win against Northern Realms with it. So, definitely is possible, but it's not at all easy.
Yeah, Kams has a very bronze-heavy hand, but that actually is kind of what you want for round one. You've got a lot of thrives, you've got quite a good curve in terms of the strength of your units. The one thing you would really like here, though, is the Werecat, and that is something that is missing from the hand. Gravesh, meanwhile, he's got his boat, he's got his drummer, he's got his Radovid's Rollguard, so he's got the kind of opening plays of this deck, and he has to decide kind of how long he wants to stay in this round one.
Yeah, it's also important to note he doesn't actually have the Amphibious Assault, but he does have a Neuromancy, and a Neuromancy can, of course, tutor out the Amphibious Assault. So Gravesh does technically have access to all of his Echo cards in round one, which is something you always want to be able to have, is have access to those Echo cards early on to get the double use of them. So we do see does come down the natural selection, which will, of course, answer the Radovid Royal Guard and just kind of reset the board state for the time being.
I think the armor and the boost on the Royal Guard is just quite a big thing. I feel like some people don't respect Radovid's Royal Guard. They're like, oh, well, you know, it's not an engine in and of itself, so I don't need to use my removal on it. But at the same time, it makes the engines unremovable, which is quite tricky.
Yeah, it's definitely a very annoying card to deal with. And it's important to note this is a loser's bracket game, which means that the winner of this stays in the tournament, but the loser, unfortunately, will be completely eliminated from the tournament. There are no more chances. This is it. Both players have to win if they want to. Well, obviously, it's not possible, but from both these players' perspectives, they have to win if they want to stay in this tournament.
Yeah, the Red Rider is being utilized to apply frost to more than one row and thin the Winter Queen. And you're right to do that before you play things like Indragus and that, because the Winter Queen isn't played, she's summoned, so she's not going to trigger any thrives anyway. But getting that out of your deck nice and early does mean you're not going to be in a situation where you do draw into it.
Yeah, this is a best of 5. This is the game number one. Drummer will come down here. Looks like Winter Queen coming out of the deck. Won't be able to get double frost value. However, there is the Bruiser in hand for Kams, which of course can move an enemy into the other row. And if that row has frost in it, it will damage it by 2 instead. So it's going to basically play for 7 points plus enabling 2 points of frost value. So kind of like a 9-point Bruiser. Definitely not bad for a 5 provision card.
Yeah, you also do get a Thrive trigger on the Winter Queen because of that 5 strength body. You do lose out, though, on, you know, your lower provision cards, your Indragas, your Bruxas, if you play it now. But by maximizing the value on the Frost, it may be worth it. You have to kind of decide what the situation is, how, you know, deep do you think your opponent is going in this situation, and what it is you kind of really want to kill. And actually, I think you can kill off the drummer, very succinctly, which makes that a massive play, and much, much more worthwhile than the Thrive.
That was a very strange positioning from Gravesh. He played the frigate on the right of the magic lamp, which means that the drummer, he didn't have the soldier pocket there. I'm not sure what the positioning, it doesn't end up matching, but I'm not sure why the positioning was like that.
Because he played the drummer, and when he played the drummer, he clicked the Jinn, right? So he created the genie, and if he placed the frigate next to the drummer, then the boat that he spawned, the crewman, the volunteer, spawns next to the Jinn. So he kind of was in a position where he would have to play an additional soldier anyway to create the pocket, and it's better to create the pocket on the right hand side where you can keep spawning volunteers, because then if some volunteers die, you can always spawn a new one compared to on the left.
At the same time, it's kind of difficult for him to get another soldier because obviously Visigoth is a knight. Looks going to go for the Neuromancy now. Going to play into Amphibious Assault, which should be able to give him another soldier. And looks like he's going to go for another drummer. Getting that boat nice and secure as Kams now is going to have to figure out a way to win round 1. Obviously, against Northern Realms, you do not want to be losing round 1 when you're playing monsters, as their long run potential is quite scary. And that's not a bad surrender for Gravesh to consider taking on the back row there. Would be able to kill both of those larvae.
Yeah, getting rid of the lava is really going to help secure him round 1. It depends if he feels like he can get this without it. The difficult thing for Gravesh here is that although he's ahead in points, these Thrive units are going to start ticking up, and monsters with toll units like Goliath or Acorn plus multiple Thrive triggers gives them a hell of a lot of reach. And Gravesh, if he wants to win this, he's going to have to be able to overcome that reach.
And there is the surrender, gonna clean up those larvae right away, respecting the value which those 5 provision cards can do. And must say, larvae still one of the strongest bronzes in the game. 5 provisions can do so much. Gravesh gonna respect it and use the surrender to kill it. As now we see this frigate and drummer combo getting Gravesh 3 points a turn. And Cam is kind of falling a little bit behind on score here, as he doesn't really have access to Yigern. So I mean, it's going to be difficult for Kams to win round 1. Looks like he's going to play the Brookson for now and set up some more Thrive for the time being.
I mean, he can still very easily catch up, you know, in a small number of plays if Gravesh opts to pass. Because the thing with the 3 points per turn is it's 3 points per turn so long as Gravesh continues to play into the round. As soon as he passes, he can't click the boat anymore. And if you can't click the boat, you don't get any volunteers. So at that point, your tempo, you know, your per turn tempo goes from 3 per turn to just 1 per turn.
Ooh, that's a big commitment from Gravesh. Playing the fallible, I think Gravesh just wants to get himself out of this round. I mean, I think this kind of play basically tells me that Gravesh is saying, if you pass round 1, even if I have to overcommit a little bit, I'll win round 3 because my long run is just so much better than yours. I don't mind committing a fallible if it forces you out of this round.
And yeah, this is the point when now catching up for Kams, it's not as easy as, you know, you just play Goliath and trigger all your Thrives because you don't have any Thrives left. So Gravesh really respecting the potential of the Thrive. And because Kams doesn't have the Acorn with those 3 extra points, that actually is quite a big thing. Because if he plays, say, the Goliath and the Conqueror, you know, that's 19 points. But he is currently down, 23? So he would need 24. I mean, there's a bleed and there's drummer pings and stuff. But basically, he doesn't have the reach on red anymore.
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, there's still leader charge to commit, but I don't think it's going to be enough. So it looks like it's going to be a pass from Kams, which means that Gravesh secures his long round 3, which is exactly what Northern Realms wants in this matchup. A little bit expensive for Gravesh, but again, I think Gravesh is not at all sad about having round control against monsters.
No, against monsters, having that control is nice. And the other thing of note is that Osril isn't set up yet, right? Acorn is in hand, Goliath is in hand. So Kams hasn't managed to set up his graveyard in the way that he would like to either. So winning that without allowing your opponent to play one of their big boys is actually quite a big thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we do see the top decks coming out from Gravesh. Top decks back into the Amphibious Assault and Neuromancy. So great to have them in round 1 as you get to use them twice due to the Echo tag. Now, I would expect Gravesh probably going to pass. It looks like he snaps right to it. No thought process in that. Just going to take the pass. And long round 3 will go underway for Kams. One big problem for Kams is he's got no graveyard really set up, which means the likes of this Osril aren't looking too good. I guess he can still Osril fallible for 8 points, but that's not amazing.
Yeah, you can always Osril the fallible. You also have the option, if necessary, of consuming your own Acorn with your leader charge, but when you have Maruna and Laugh in hand, you know, that's not exactly what you want to be doing. Sometimes there's a situation where you do have excess leader charges with this deck, depending on how you draw and how the round kind of plays out, but in this situation that's not ideal, and I think your guess maybe better. Although with Haunt, there you go, now you do have a few extra consumes, and those extra consumes are actually really, really big, because it does mean he can put Osril in the graveyard himself, but it does play into Baron.
However, speaking of Haunt, however, looks like Bomb Heaver is in deck for Gravesh, so I would expect the Neuromancy will be used onto that at some point, as Gravesh now finishing his last mulligans, as his hand is looking quite good. He's missing out on the Reynard and the Bomb Heaver. Of course, he can find the Bomb Heaver with the Neuromancy. He can still find the Reynard with the Amphibious Assault if he wanted to. And looking at Kam's hand, not too bad either, but again, a long round 3 against Northern Realms is not what you want to have.
Yeah, Kams has more or less everything he needs. He doesn't have an Anglefar, but that's okay because there's no golds in deck. I think the one card you'd want to switch out is you would probably want to switch out the natural selection for the Endraga Lava. Other than that, that is a stacked monster's hand. And Kam's just playing the Haunt. You know, this is kind of like a... I mean, is it even a Heaver check? If you know, if he's already played a Neuromancy, so he knows a Neuromancy is a thing. So it's not even a Heaver check at this point.
Yeah, Bomb Heaver is there. Will come down onto the Haunt, and that will be answered right back by, it seems, Maruna. Although Maruna not going to be triggered just yet, going to rather keep it to try maybe steal an engine at some point. Obviously, what Kams could do is combine that with maybe something like a natural selection and steal something like maybe an Anno or maybe a frigate or some kind of engine later on. And he's going to not use the Maruna just yet.
Yeah, this puts Kams in a really awkward, not Kams, Gravesh in a really awkward position, because it kind of forces him to respect the Maruna and maybe use leader charges or cards in such a way to try and play around it. But in doing that, you're not using your leader charges in the way you would optimally.
For sure, makes this threat is very. The nice thing about this for Kams is now he gets to combine natural selection and something else in the same turn as Maruna with the leader ability. It looks like he's gonna play the Unsafe now and kill the very well played from Gravesh, using both leader charges there and forcing that Maruna just to be a 4-point card. I really like this play from Gravesh, boosting up both of those cards and making that Maruna kind of worthless.
Yeah, that was a really heads-up play by Gravesh, just dealing with Maruna, killing her but not giving her a target. And Kams, if he had been a little less greedy and utilized that, he could have had 8 extra points.
Yeah, that was definitely well played there from. I mean, that was a very heads-up play, as you mentioned, and now the Maruna's threat is now gone. I mean, this long round 3 not looking great for Gravesh. I'm not sure if Kams was keeping in mind this line of play. Maybe Kams forgot about this ability, the sequencing of things, or maybe he was just hoping that maybe Gravesh missed out on the Unsayes. Now we do see the Heatwave coming down to banish that Ethereum Phantom, and there it goes into the Shadow Realms, as it will no longer be able to get any value. I
think you have to respect it, right? You have to respect the amount of points per turn that is. It doesn't maybe look like the spiciest Heatwave ever, but that unit's going to grow and grow and grow. And with 7 cards left, plus you can trigger it through the 3 damage. It's actually a pretty good Heatwave target, especially when you can kind of deal with the other big boys, right? You've got the Last Say, so you can Baron the Osril. You can kill the Ighern because it's only up at 6 points of damage, and you should potentially have enough damage to deal with that across your cards, right? If you've got the Visigoth, for example, as an option, you've got Tridam with boosts and stuff, you can hopefully be able to just kill the Ighern rather than have to Heatwave it.
Man, now it's gonna be so difficult for. So Gravesh is gonna play the Anna. I mean, I would imagine that Kams is probably gonna use that. That looks like he's gonna go with the Werecat, damaging the Anna for now, turning it back offline. However, Gravesh can of course turn it back on with something like maybe the Centurion Chances, or even maybe Amphibious Assault onto a Reynard could turn it back on, perhaps. So let's see what Gravesh decides to do to try to keep this Anna going.
The trouble is that Kams does have 5 points of damage, right, between the natural selection and consuming the Werecat. So you need to get the Anna up to a 6 if you do want her to survive. And if you're expecting that kind of play, then maybe this is a little bit excessive. Or you go, if you go melee row, yep, see? This is exactly the thing with Gravesh, is he knows that he needs more than 5 points of damage. So utilizing the Amphibious Assault with the melee row Radovid Guard makes that a lot stronger.
I must say, both these players are playing extremely well. I mean, I like what Kams was trying to do with the play of the Werecat, but also the Maruna play. Obviously, it didn't end up working for him, but he was obviously threatening something quite. Otherwise, with the Maruna play, Gravesh can always just play around the Maruna, but it was the only way kind of to try get Maruna value onto an engine. And of course, Gravesh playing around Kams' cards quite well as too. Now we do see Oberon coming down onto this Wild Warrior. Now Kams is going to trigger the Werecat to turn the Anna back off for the time being as Gravesh. Let's see what he decides to do about that.
I think he has an easy solution to that with the Enchantress, right? Because now you've seen that the Werecat trigger, they don't have that 1 point of damage anymore. You know that the only real option is natural selection, for example. I don't believe the deck runs Parasite, so as a result, you can just boost it right back up.
And there the Anna now does go down to 1 strength, which means it still gets to survive. And now it is the Triumph Infantry will still get some value from this Anna. Anna won't get 2 points turned, but when combined with the Triumph, it kind of will. And now we do see does come down the Deathluff. Deathluff, of course, will be consumed by the Desert Banshee, but Kams now using Leader Charge to keep that Yegan value alive, putting in the Graveyard as well for his Osral. But in doing so, massive Bloody Baron.
I know, but you'd have a massive Bloody Baron anyway, right? Kams realizes that Gravesh is going to have a massive Baron on Osral regardless. Whereas this way, you've created 2 big targets, so at least one of them will stick. And you're also saying, hey, you have this many boosted units, and I know you have Visigood, so you're going to put the Igkern in the graveyard anyway. So rather than allow them to utilize the Igkern to remove those points, you're putting them on the board, and you're spreading out your boost as much as you possibly can to try and basically win the game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I must say, despite... I wonder how this would have looked if Kams went for a safer line and played the Maruna just for pure value. How this game might have looked, because it honestly doesn't look it's not too far apart. Now we do see Range Rover Bloody Baron, as that will obviously reset the Osral. It is going to be a 10-point swing more for Kams, actually more than that, because there's a Banshee. Actually, a lot of points in favor of Kams here, but I think Bloody Baron plus Visigood should do it. It is very close, however, much closer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it is exceptionally close. Ooh, he's not... Oh, 2 points! 2 points.
Had Kams... Was there a winning line? I feel like
Maruna.
Kams might have had a winning line there. Like that Maruna played for pure value. But then does he have enough consumes for all of his cards though? I'm not even sure he's going to have consumes again.
Yeah, if he consumes the Maruna, he loses out on a consume. Because he consumed the Osral with the leader... Not the Osral, the Yikern with the leader charge. So he would have lost out on the consume on the Deathluff, which is -5. But if you consume the thing, you get +8. So it would have been, I think he maybe would have had it with the Maruna, but you have to go back and do the maths. And
that was a really great game of Gwent, I must say.
Yeah, it was a really, really good game of Gwent. That's like where tournaments shine, is when you see games like that where both players, you can, you literally watch them kind of trying to outplay each other and play around each other's cards.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting one to watch. Now we're going to get into game number 2. Gravesh will get the early lead through with Northern Realms against Monsters, barely, but does take the win. And game number 1 in favor. Let's see what Kams is going to be able to do now, as he needs to now mount a little bit of a comeback, as he's on the back foot for the time being.
Yeah, so in terms of your sequencing, it obviously does switch in terms of who's on red and who's on blue. So we should see Kams on blue now and Gravesh on red. The Northern Realms Monsters matchup is such an interesting one. We do occasionally see that Monsters list manage to overcome Northern Realms, but I think it's incredibly tricky. Like, I think if you are a high skill player like Kams, we saw, just how succinctly he piloted that list, and it still became really, really close.
Yep, very close indeed, especially... Wouldn't be what I expected going into long round 3 against Northern Realms. Obviously, Northern Realms typically is very strong in long rounds, especially against Monsters, which doesn't have that much long round potential. As now we're going to get game number 2 underway. Looks like Gravesh is going to be queuing in with something. I'm not sure what. There it is. Northern Realms on Kams' side. Gravesh going to be Nilfgaard. This Nilfgaard deck is a tactic, hefty, Helga-oriented deck. And it's going to be, I think, a lot about first save. Both these players do have quite threatening engines. And for that reason, I think first save is going to matter quite a bit in round 2/3.
Yeah, Hefty Helga is such a pain to shut down if you don't, initially have the setup ready to, say, remove the shield. Because if you try and duel it, for example, if the first hit just hits the armor, and then, the Helga will just hit you back and kill you. So dealing with Helga is very tricky. A nice option, though, I would say, is Philippa. If it's just the Helga, you can always use the first ping to... remove the arm, and then you have 6 points of damage, provided they all hit the Helga. But then with Imperial Formation, you can play around that by boosting it up to 8 instead. Yep,
Imperial Formation gives you so much flexibility in how you play around things. As we now see, Carrack Frigate will be leading off the assault for Kams, as we still have those drummers in hand. Lots of engines, but unfortunately for Kams, does not find the Infamous Assault. Again, it's a card you really want to find earlier on in the game. Looking at Gravesh's hand, however, he is going to be on red coins, so has the luxury of not worrying too much about losing on even, but he still would like to win round 1, I assume. Let's see what he's going to be able to do here.
Yeah, I think when control and going first and stuff matters, winning round 1 is a big deal. So just setting up his own, I guess lesser engine. The crossbowman's not bad, but you have to play the soldiers in order for it to trigger.
And I like this play from Gravesh a lot. He's forcing Kams to TA his frigate. Otherwise, it does die to a tourney joust. And in doing so, it makes the poison so much better for Gravesh. So very nice play there from Gravesh. You could have taken the early poison on the frigate, but it was so much better now that it has been boosted all the way up to 8.
Yeah, it's just like when you expect your opponent to play certain things, you're kind of putting them into a position where they have to play around some cards, and in doing so, they're playing into other cards. And that's something that you see at the top level of Gwent, is basically forcing your opponent to play around one thing by playing into something else. And
yeah.
I mean, he did have both the Tony Joust and the poisons, though, so you're kind of damned if you did and damned if you didn't if you're Kams.
Yep, couldn't have said any better myself. Definitely well played from Gravesh there. However, Kams still has a lot of engines on the board, so not forced out of round 1 just yet. We do see a try they're pinging off the last bit of armor off this crossbowman, so no more soldier synergy to be made from that. However, Gravesh's hand, what exactly do you want to commit if you want to keep going here? You don't really want to commit that mana because you block your own magnet, but what else do you commit?
I know, this is a tricky point. You have to kind of decide how much do I want to play into this round. Like, your mana would block your magni, and then you'd probably want to draw, if you were going to do that, draw something like a Tony Joust just to draw bad bronze, and he's just opting to instead just play the Tony Joust, and I guess kill the Cutthroat, to just disable the bleeding, and then just wait to see what it is that Kams tries to do, because the point gap's not that big at this point, 17 to 20.
Yeah, it's not that big, and I mean, Kams is still earning 2 points per turn passively. He's going to commit the Visigoth. That's a big card to commit, but maybe that does secure him round 1, but at the expense of committing the Visigoth. Visigoth is a nice tool that you could potentially use to try ping off a shield off the hefty Hulga and potentially, threaten a Philippa or Anseus to kill it.
I mean, I was going to say, it does open up the option if Gravesh wanted to keep going that he can now play the mana without, disabling his own engines. With that said, I think he'd just rather save the value. He got, big value out of Kams. The Visigoth is a big commitment, especially against Helga, because that does give you versatility with these 1-point damage pings. So I think at that point, he's actually not too unhappy.
And there is the Heatwave for Kams, which is, I think, does he run a Purifier? I don't think that he does, which Heatwave is going to be the only tool that Kams really has of getting through that defender. Unfortunately for Gresh, no defender yet in hand. Of course, he does have Royal Decree off the mana to find a defender if he wants to. Finds a support poison, which helps the morale be a little bit more valuable, I guess. And there is the Amphibious Assault for Kams. Great card to find. However, in round number 2, question is, what is Kams going to do to bleed here, practically speaking?
He's opted to just play the Trident for the time being and see, but it's a tricky bleed because you don't really have good options, like you said, with Purifying, because if you want to get through the Defender, you have to play the Heat Wave, but if you do that, you can't Heat Wave the Helga. So you almost want to get your opponent into a position where they play the Defender, and then you pass, so that then they can't defend the Helga. That's the kind of tactic here. And I think if you do that and go down a card, it's still okay because you can deal with the Helga so easily. But, Gravesh at the same time, he's just going to want to try and hold that Defender and hold that Helga as long as possible.
Yes, you can always just bless RNG and the Trident pings to ping off the shield on the hefty Helga, I suppose.
It's tough. And now Gravesh is has to make a decision, how much does he want a card? Versus how much does he care about things like leader charges? Because if you lock this, for example, you're uneven. You can get ahead with the leader charge, but if you don't care about playing another card or you expect Kams to continue with the bleed, which he did, then it's not worth it.
There is the Eggman. Eggman, of course, will be able to boost the Jason unit by 1 each turn, similar to what the drummer is able to do. However, Eggman has an order ability which can do 3 damage to the opposite or to a card whenever you want to. In doing so, it will lose its engine value, but gives you nice flexibility where you can choose some damage. This Eggman is kind of nice for Kams because he can use this order potentially to ping off the shield off the hefty Helga and set up an Anseus. So it's actually quite threatening for Gravesh. I think you would definitely want to get rid of this Eggman. Yeah,
what is going on with his neck, though, in that premium? He does this roar, and his neck is, on a spring. It's just, I don't know. Doesn't look very healthy. Yeah, I think dealing with the Eggman is 100% a worthwhile cause. The problem is you can't poison it, right? Because it's got that veil. So although one of the ways Nilfgaard deals with things is just to poison away your troubles.
Or lock, and you can't even do that either.
Yeah, well, he spent his lock.
Ooh. Commits the hefty Helga. I mean, Kams could potentially just take a Philippa here. And I think Philippa with Eggman can pretty easily do it.
Yeah, you should completely shut down the Helga relatively easily in this situation.
Gravesh played till the very last second there. Did he maybe rope out, perhaps? Not use any leader charges to try play on any of these things?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he did play right till the last second, so in terms of roping, this might just be a rope friend. I don't know. I don't really know what he's valuing over the Helga. That's the question. Maybe Stefan?
Guess we'll see. It's definitely going to be an interesting one. Kams definitely has quite a few options right now. He can commit Philippa to kill it if he wants to and use the Eggman to finish it off. He could also play Heatwave, but then if he plays Heatwave, he can't answer the defender later. So I don't think he wants to commit looks like he's going to go for the Philippa instead. And Eggman, of course, can finish it off. There it is. 10-point gap in favor of Kams. A little bit surprised Gravesh didn't play around this with maybe some leader charge or something, but looks like Hefty Helga has been dealt with.
Yeah, and there's still not really great poison options, and there's not really great options in general for Gravesh. When you play the Helga like that, where you basically just sacrificed her, your plan has to be, you know, something to do with Stefan, bribery, and probably your defender. Right? But you want to do that in the next round, which leaves you with Invocation, which doesn't have great options, a Fangs onto, what, a 5? And Morale. So none of your options feel particularly good in this situation.
Yeah, definitely not indeed. Here we do see the morale coming down onto that boost up to Sim, which means that this is not a bad heat wave for Kams, but again, Kams kind of needs the heat wave for the defender, so he can't really just use it freely whenever he wants. And now we will see Kams not deciding whether he wants to keep going this round out. He is only up by 3 points. Going to take the heat wave anyway, and that is, I mean, Gravesh does have the support poison, so it's not the end of the world for Gravesh, but that does mean that, you know, that defender, how exactly
there's nothing he can do. That's the thing. I think that's quite a big play, if I'm completely honest with you, because as a result, it means that the defender is free, the double bribery is free, and I think at this point, Kams is just trying to get as much out of Gravesh as he can.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Kams is saying to himself, if I can at least bleed out the defender, then I don't have to worry about in round 3. Maybe that's Kams's line of play. He wants to bleed out the Fion so that it's not a problem in round 3, because Gravesh definitely still has a lot of point potential with Stefan and bribery, as we now do see the Anna coming down, and of course Gravesh has got the invocation, and he's rather going to go for the bribery, it seems. Takes the Falibor, and I think that will get Gravesh maybe ahead on score. So now Gravesh threatens to get card advantage as that. So great bribery roll there onto the Falibor, must be said.
Yeah, it puts Kams in a really awkward position with both of these cards as well. You know, you play the drummer and you boost the Anna, and the Anna boosts you back, so it's okay, but you're getting a couple points per turn, but you're not getting the gap that you would need where Gravesh can't catch him in one card. And the thing is, Gravesh doesn't have to use Menno for Royal Decree, right? He can just use the Menno and thin the Tourney Joust and then hopefully draw into the Royal Decree, but that's risky because you do risk then having a dead Stefan, right? So you have to kind of think about these things when you move forward, that you have enough tactics in your deck. On the flip side, he does also have the Invocation, and if he can get ahead with the Invocation, that saves both of those cards for the next round.
And now it looks like Kams is going to use some leader charges. He's going to use all leader charges, in fact, and that puts Gravesh under some awkward situation. I guess Invocation probably is going to be what he decides to commit here, I think, but I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Stefan.
I think what you could do is you could just use the Invocation onto something like the Anna, gets you 6 points. Then you've got your leader charges, right? You know, typically you do save your leader charges for the final round to protect things, but when you have there's no Purify and you have guaranteed defender, you don't really need the leader charges in the same way. So what you could do is thin the Alpha and use your leader charges and potentially use something like an Invocation, or just get this in one card.
I think maybe Kams has overstayed his welcome a little bit in this round. I think he probably has to pass him. If he passes, that means that Gravesh gets to keep 2 leader charges around 3. It's going to go into top deck mode, and Gravesh would still end up top decking into that Anna, which he can use quite well with his leader ability as well.
I feel like, you know, with Kams, he can play the Baron, he can reset the Stefan, but you're still playing against a bribery. You've got 2 leader charges plus 1 more card at this stage. You know, it's not really what you want to be doing. And here comes the next bribery. I think this is just Gravesh seeing the space he has. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, the Eggman should be good enough. Going to play for 7 points. Damages the Anna. Is he going to rather keep the Invocation for round 3 and play? Oh, you can take the Eggman instead. Interesting. Okay, I was expecting him to invocate the Anna, but looks like he rather wants the Eggman. I guess Eggman is obviously also a very good card, so doesn't surprise me that much. But let's see what round 3 is going to show both these players. As Cam still has got Falibor in deck, as well as that Amphibious Assault, which we know he top decks back into.
Eggman's better in a short round than an Anna, right? Because you have the option of dealing the damage, so you don't just play it and then you get like maybe 2 turns of pings. You play it, you get a turn of pings, and then you get the 3 points of damage as well. That hand for Gravesh, I think you're happy. You got your Crossbowman, you got your Ramonski, Menno for Royal Decree. You've basically got access to everything. But Kams did find the Falibor.
Yeah, Falibor is in hand. Falibor is a good card, but again, Gravesh can play around Falibor by using this leader charge to boost things out of Falibor range. So, I mean, it's still to be seen how much value this Falibor actually will end up being, but obviously still at least a 10-point card, so not bad at all. And must be said, the Gravesh's cards, a lot of them have armor, right? You got Eggman that has 1 armor, you got Ramon that's got 2 armor, you got Crossman that's got 2 armor, so it could be difficult for Falibor to hit its mark.
And I kind of feel like Gravesh doesn't even need the Defender at this point, right? Defender plays into Baron to an extent, well, unless you put the boost on something else. So do you even need the Defender when your alternative option is something like a Brathens?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. We do see the Amphibious Assault onto that Karak Frigate, and there it goes, chat. Time to click the boat.
Yeah, there's a boat for clicking. It's all set up. I mean, I think Gravesh's sequencing is, relatively straightforward at this point. You're going to play Ramon, you're going to play your Crossbowman, you're going to play your other Crossbowman, and then you're going to play Menno. And then maybe you'll click the egg, because you don't have a boat to click. But not till later, probably.
Yeah, it does seem like we have entered that part of the game where cards will just get clicked. Here comes down the Bloody Baron on the range row. I think that this is actually very close, isn't it? It's actually very close. Menno into Royal Decree. What is left into...
Brathens.
What is left in... Oh, okay, never mind. Not close.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the Menno into Royal Decree. You didn't even need the Theon in the end. Like once the Purify, the Heatwave was out and Helga's out and stuff, and you've played Stefan already, you're not really worried about protecting anything. Although you do have the option. You had Brathens, and he's actually opted to just protect against the Baron charges, which is quite sad.
Yeah, looks like it's not so close indeed. Game number 2 will go in favor of Gravesh. So now Kams is going to have to reverse sweep Gravesh's final deck. And we saw reverse sweep almost happen today. Let's see if we can see it again, as Gravesh and Kams is so far 2-0 in favor of Gravesh. Like I said, Kams needs to reverse sweep if he wants to stay in this tournament. Kams can no longer lose any more games in this tournament, or at least for the time being, if he wants to stay in it.
But Gravesh's only remaining list so far is Syndicate, and we have seen Syndicate be quite sad so far. So we'll have to see. You've got 3 shots with it. It can't be that bad, right? Right? I mean, that's famous last words right there.
3 shots. I mean, you expect at some point you should be able to find a win, but I mean, it can happen. The Syndicate is one of those decks which has been underperforming, I guess you could say, in this tournament. So let's see if Gravesh can be able to make something happen with that.
So Gravesh also back on, I believe, the red side this time around. So he's also got the added bonus that he gets to play reactively, and Kams opting to run this overwhelming hunger list. And Maruna is the kind of pain in the butt card in this situation if you are the Syndicate player. But Maruna not currently in Kams' hand.
So now Gravesh will be on blue, which is tricky. I mean, Syndicate is not built for red coins. It can be okay on red coins sometimes, but look at Gravesh's hand. It's not looking too bad. He's got some poison. Oh, actually, he's got 1 poison. Okay, so actually, it's a little bit iffy. But Kams, on the other hand, is queuing with monsters. Now, monsters is the kind of deck that can quite often win on even. If you see monsters win on even, that's when things get very dicey.
Yeah, monsters on red does have that kind of bully potential, which is kind of annoying. I also quite like seeing the Geralts jump onto the battlefield when each player finishes mulliganing. So you can kind of tell when they've done mulliganing by when Geralt goes, ha! And then appears.
I never actually even pay attention to that one. That's an interesting way to see it.
So that's how you tell.
That is how you tell indeed. So looking at the hands here for both players, there is an Imke on the board, which of course we do see the Bruiser in hand for Kams, which you can obviously use on that Imke and disable it. So now we do see the Jack coming down with the Tiger's Eye, getting Gravesh up to 9 coins, thinning out that Flying Redanian. Such a nice card to get out early on. But now we do see the that's gonna be actually quite interesting. The Red Riders do put bleed on both throws, but once this Flying Redanian ends up dying, it will be able to come back, as this card even if it's in the graveyard, it can return to the board as long as you're at Horde 9.
Yeah, and there is a lot of, profit in Gravesh's hand, so I don't think he's worried about, losing the Redanian and then not getting back to 9 coins in this scenario. With that said, you've got a Thrive Engine on Kams' side, and Kams' hand, in terms of Thrive Engines, is a little bit lacking. He's got the Bruxa, for example, but other than that, and the Winter Queen, you don't have your Indregalavas, which you really like to see in round 1.
And now we do see the Corkstein coming out, keeping Gravesh at 9 coins, allowing him to get this Flying Redanian back again next turn when it does inevitably die to the Frost. Now we do see the Bruiser coming down. However, Bruiser coming down now for Kams means that Imke might be safe because now there is no more movement. So this Imke looking quite dangerous at this point.
Yeah, she
so
is.
What is Kams doing about that?
She is looking AMK at this point in time because there's no longer the counter. Gravesh, you can see, as soon as he sees the Bruiser, he's like, haha, I have more money. And that Frost actually, the play with the Bruiser wasn't completely terrible, even though it hasn't counted MK, just because it stopped the Frost from hitting the Redanian. We were talking about, the Redanian's going to come back, but it's actually meant that the Frost damage went onto the Jackal instead, which means the Redanian didn't get killed, which means it can't be summoned from the graveyard.
Yeah, but at the same time, MK sticking is such a menacing card because Kams has no Toll Punish, which means that this Sea Jackal is getting basically 3 points a turn with MK getting boost. So that is quite a nuisance. Now we do see down comes the Azar to try keep this MK safe. And I mean, what is Kams going to do about this? Like, how does he go about this? If Monsters loses round number 1 against Syndicate with no Passiflora counter, no Bomb Heaver, how on earth is Kams going to make the comeback in along round 3?
Yeah, this is the point where you can't do anything about the MK. He was hoping that the bleed would go through and then he'd naturally select MK to die. She would fail the evolutionary test, but it turns out that scarabs are a thing. And as a result of that, there's nothing that Kams can really do. He can kind of continue to push the round, but with the MK ticking and the Jackal getting, taller and taller, it's very difficult to play into this.
And now we do see does come down that Goliath and Gravesh. I mean, if he wins round 1, it's going to be so devastating for Kams. I don't know how he's going to do it. He doesn't even have dominance. He can't even use the Wild Hunt Warrior to kill the Scarab. So, I mean, maybe he can try it. Is Oberon give him something that he can deal with? I mean, Oberon right now is a spawn. Like, it's not even. You
don't get a choice.
Oh boy, oh, geez, this is looking so bad for Kams.
I mean, maybe he's hoping to just get a bit more out of Gravesh, but at this point, Gravesh is quite comfortable just spending a little bit of money, and he can always play the Fistack and poison, say, his Flying Redanian, for example, and just take the 3 coins. Oh, he's pretending. Look at this poser. Gravesh, you poser. Oh, I've got poison. Gravesh does not have poison. Well, he has bank, but typically you don't want to use your bank to find a poison.
So, if that Gwent were to die, it would pull out of Gravesh's deck right now. Just a random 4-point card. Not sure which one it'll end up being, but yeah, you gotta look at this board set from Kams and wonder what exactly you're gonna do about it. I guess there's no reason for Kams to pass just yet. He can still try and at least contest round 1 and shorten round 3 as much as possible. But man, a long round 3 against Passiflora, that could be a big, big problem.
If you're Gravesh in this situation, what is your worst card? He's at this position where all of his cards are pretty decent. So what do you spend in this scenario in order to take the round? Like, you can play the bank and try and find the poison, and then thin a 4-point card. And I think it's pretty okay to do that, right? Because most of your 4-point cards are pretty meh. That, for example, that's a great thin, because you don't want that.
Actually, no, that is something you do want because...
Is it a haunt list? Oh, wait, it's a haunt list! Oh, no!
So that Bomb Heaver coming out of Gravesh's deck is actually a pretty devastating thing. Losing on the Bomb Heaver means that Kams will get his Haunt through. Self-milling his Bomb Heaver here ends up being actually very, very bad for Gravesh.
And there were 5 other options, so that was a 1 in 6. We'll just put that one out there. There was 2 Seductresses, a Jackal, and 2 Mutated Hounds. Gravesh, I don't think he needed to take that poison, though. He was in that much of a comfortable position. He didn't necessarily need it.
I mean, I think Gravesh is still favored in this matchup, but he's now given himself, I guess you could say, a lose condition, as means that the Haunt will stick for Kams. However, in a long run, I gotta say, I think Passiflora is a lot more valuable than Haunt is. However, now that Gravesh has also played the bank, it means he has to draw that Passiflora, and if he doesn't end up drawing it, suddenly this is looking a lot more winnable for Kams.
Yeah, not having a Passiflora in your hand is quite a sad thing. But with that said, Kams doesn't have the Haunt either. So if Kams can't find Haunt, then that might be a kind of silver lining if neither of them find their scenario. You know, in that scenario, that there is no scenario, then I don't know who's favored.
Let's see what happens here as final mulligans will go underway. Gravesh does have round control. Don't think Bleeding Monsters is going to be the play to make, so I would expect Gravesh is probably going to end up passing here. Cam's got a very strong looking hand for the time being, and looks like dry pass will happen for Gravesh.
Yeah, Nagafar potentially finding the Haunt, but at the moment there are 4 gold cards, I believe, in Cam's list. You've got Maruna, the Werecat, and good old Igurn as well. So, you know, that's not guaranteed either. You're gonna have to, it comes down a lot to draws here, you know, in terms of who's going to get a little bit of an edge. Natural Selection and a Doggo, Seductress and a Noonwraith. Oh my god, look at that draw bronze cards!
He still finds the Passiflora, so Gravesh very happy he didn't get punished with that. Finds Passiflora, that is a great top deck there. Finds almost everything, just misses the Philippa, but other than that, can't complain too much from Gravesh's point of view. There's the Maruna for Kams, so Kams also got a pretty decent hand. Unfortunately for Kams, though, he does miss out on the Yigan and the Werecat as well as the Haunt, which means that the Haunt is not guaranteed. It's only a 60%, 66% off the Nagelfar, so 2 in 3 chance of finding it only.
Yeah, 66 is still nice, though. The tricky thing here for Gravesh is Maruna. Because if you play the Passiflora, you spawn a Seductress, your opponent can just Maruna it straight off the bat. So usually what you want to do is you want to try and play something as a counter or as a kind of stopgap or as a way to kind of dilute the board a little bit so that your opponent doesn't have that option. The problem is there's really not good options for diluting the board in this scenario. You do, however, have access to your blood money. And blood money on a early in Drago actually isn't the worst play ever because you do get a lot of profit. And having profit is useful because it means you can play things and start spending money. And yeah, see, that's what we see here. So blood money puts the money up to 7 and it means you can play Soul and he goes to straight up to 6 out of Maruna range.
Yeah, there is the leaderability. Second, Andrega Larva on the board. I must say, Andrega Larvae, that is quite scary. 2 of them in a long round 3. That might give Cam some footing in this long round. However, again, Gravesh, so much value to be made with this pass forward. Now, we do see the Ewald coming down the board. Not going to spend anything with it. Rather going to get himself to Horde 9. And I must say, Xal in a long round 3, getting 3 points to no toll punish from Kams. What on earth is Kams going to do about the Xal?
I don't think he can really do anything. You know, he can't even get it to the point where it's, you know, Maruna-able, right? If you could get it down, then you could maybe try and steal it, but that's never going to happen with Monster's Toolkit. I think it's just a 3-point potential, and then when that's happening, you don't even care particularly that Maruna's going to take your Seductress. With that said, 3 Andregas, 3 Thrives is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big... I mean, Cam's got a lot of engine value of his own, but man, Gravesh is going to have just a little bit more, I think, as Cams will, of course, still have a Nagelfar he needs to play. The question is, will he find the Haunt of the Nagelfar? And does he even have Death Wish to support it at this point? I don't think he does. He's used the Maruna early, which means he does get to steal the Seductress, which is a great steal there from Maruna, but that means that the Haunt now does not have enough Death Wish cards to fully proc it.
Yeah, you got himself in a little bit of a pickle with that. I mean, you've got Igurn still, right? You've got the Igurn instead of the Haunt, so you could just opt not to play the Haunt and maybe to try and get Igurn or Werecat instead. Werecat, though, you have to consume it, which would take one of your leader charges. If you do that, you lose one on Dettlaff, which isn't great. Igurn, on the other hand, you know, you have to play him at a point where your opponent can't just kill him. And Gravesh's damage options now, because Ewald is dead, are very limited. He does have Tin Boy, though, but Tin Boy only deals 2 damage, right? So if he Nagelfars now into Igurn, how does Gravesh kill Igurn? He doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think that he can really. I mean, I guess he can always just self-consume the... I guess he needs to keep the self-consumes for the Deadly 5 Vampire. Yeah, it could be interesting. Goes in for the Nagelfar now. What does he find? He does find the Yigan, so he will be able to keep it safely out of any type of... It takes the Haunt instead. Interesting. So opting not to go for the Yigan, rather the Haunt. And... interesting choice there. Haunt, of course, still plays for some decent points on the Deadly Vampire, but again, won't be able to get fully procced, however.
It's weird because you've got your leader charges anyway, right? You've got your 2 leader charges for your Dettlaff, so you don't really need the Haunt consume. I guess the Haunt, it gives you a Desert Banshee, and you'd also get a Barghast, which is worth 9. But Igurn is 13. I feel like Igurn was a better,
I guess what
choice.
Maybe Kams is anticipating some poisons and he wants the extra consumes because he's scared of poison cards, so he just wants those extra consumes. Looks like now we see the Oberon, and with all these Thrive on the board, this Oberon ends up playing for quite a few points. Unfortunately, the Nagelfar's Taskmaster isn't going to be the most amazing pull right now, only going to play for 5 points, but with all these Thrives on the board, it ends up being quite a bit. But man, look at this Sal, 22 points already. What on earth is going on with that value? And look at these Seductresses getting double proc from this Haunt. That's another problem with the Haunt is it spawns units, which means it double procs Seductresses quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The Seductress. I guess he's playing around poison in that scenario. And we have full information, so we know that the Acorn is better. But I can definitely see the thought process there. You have these Thrive triggers, and the Thrive triggers are super nice. But you're triggering what 3 Thrives, and your opponent is triggering 2 Seductresses plus Soul. Like it is so good for Gravesh. Look at that boy. He is 25-point Soul.
Yeah, man, this Sal is absolutely running away with it. There is the Oswald going to come down for only 11 points. Point gap just does not look big enough. I mean, it is a pretty big point gap. But I mean, look at the Tin Boy, you got all these points in the bank. 93
points, but Tin Boy with full points, Sea Jackal, and a 25-point Soul on the side of Gravesh. 95 to 81 points might seem insurmountable, but I think that Soul, folks, as Gravesh deciding, does he want the tribute? Does he need the tribute? He's happy.
Does not go for the tribute, man. So unlike Gravesh, look for the most BM way to take the game. Look like Sal running away with the passive floor, just too strong in a long round 3. And Gravesh will take this series in a very clean 3-0, which means that will be the last we see of Kams, unfortunately, in this tournament, as that was his loser's bracket game. So Kams has been eliminated. Gravesh will still stay in it. Let's have a look at the brackets and see what exactly is going on.
So there you have it. What did you think of the games? What was your favorite moment between them? How do you feel like the different factions performed? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoy this sort of video, you can always leave a like on the video. Beyond that, you can find me on Twitter at Jagras and Twitch, twitch.tv/Jagras. You can find Spiro on Twitch, twitch.tv/Spiro_ZA. And you can find Team Leviathan Gaming at teamleviathangaming.com to find out more about what they do. They do a lot of things like meta reports, big tournaments like this, and all sorts of Gwenty cool stuff. Beyond that, have an awesome day, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!